Hey folks, Rick Barron, Lincoln Vlogs, with some thoughts about our the rodents in our government. If one has not noticed, there is a stench coming from the offices of the FBI. This tends to happen every so often when copious amounts of rats and cheese are present. Not sure about you, but the current circumstances surrounding James Comey, Bob Mueller, Peter Schrock, Lisa Page, Loretta Lynch, hell, Hillary Clinton, and others has reached an all-time low at the Bureau. Now, for some of you, this is much ado about nothing, but for others, there are some serious questions regarding integrity, bias, prejudice, intolerance, obsessive-compulsive disorders, abuse of power, obstruction of justice, and yes, even conspiracies and conspirators. While some are laughing when these words are mentioned, allow us to gain some perspective on the matter. As I've written in the past, politics, time, the natural order of life are all subject to the political pendulum. If one were to take a brief ride on the proverbial time machine to the presidency of Abraham Lincoln and the 1860s era, the nation was split apart by these very same matters described above. Yes, there was slavery, there was a civil war, and there was a divided nation at stake. But underlying all of this was power. Who had it and who was about to lose it was worth fighting and dying for, apparently. Unfortunately for this nation, the conspirators were so emboldened that they assassinated the President of the United States. A tragedy under any circumstances, but the karmic forces surrounding this act worked against those involved in the plot, and the nation rallied to the right side of the law, ultimately defeating the South and slavery. The Secret Service and related agencies of the time pursued the conspirators, and those convicted were hung or shot dead. Today, of course, it is offensive to have memorials and statues honoring those who believed in their cause at the time. Perhaps it was a way of appeasing those who were defeated. But more importantly, not much was mentioned about those who died on the battlefields for no apparent reason. But I digress. The pendulum swung right, and those on the opposite end were wrong. We re-entered the time machine now and fast forward to the late 50s, 1950s, the Eisenhower administration with Richard Nixon as vice president. For decades, the war machines dictated policy, but now times were about to adjust. Nixon was to be the natural ascendant to the throne, except for a fly in his ointment of well-laid plans. A tentative strategic ops was in place to invade Cuba, with only the official coronation and crowning ceremonies to take place, preventing that covert action. However, a young, attractive upstart from the Ivy Leaguers, along with his daddy's money, decided to challenge the savvy strategist Nixon for the presidency. This assumed ascension was similar to the Clinton reign, followed by the Obama era, with Hillary merely there for her close-up. She and her conspirators were merely following protocol with a required election designed to appease the sheep. Nixon got burned. He got burned badly, and he was shamed out of power and office. The entire nest of rats were driven out from their enclaves, except for some soldiers in the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, and others who stood to gain from a smooth transition. The pendulum was now swinging back the other way. Many did not like it. Some of the conspiratorial rats despised it so much that they assassinated their opponent, who just happened to be the president. This is beginning to sound like a novel from a third world country. Yes, our president was wiped out with one blow, and then the infamous cover-up found within the Moses-like tablets known as the Warren Commission report. The entire conspiratorial plot was so deep and so pervasive that it had to be buried and sealed in concrete like Hoffa's body and good luck with discovering the truth on that one. Of course, the patsies, Oswald and Ruby, were the expendables. Jumping back into the time machine, we fast forward to 1968. Now it's payback time. President Johnson was no Kennedy, and the nation was being torn apart by a war that no one wanted. Dick Nixon rode in on his dark horse, saved the nation, but the only problem was that he brought his karma and a new outfit with him. He posed as something other than what he was. And so for his re-election, he vowed to win at any cost, even if it meant a full-blown conspiratorial plot against his enemies to accomplish those goals. This time it was known as Watergate, but it was the same abuse of power as all of the previous actions described. The covert operation was led by those from the CIA, FBI, NSA, and anyone else who felt justified by their actions in support of Richard Nixon, at any cost. And in case some of you missed that chapter, Nixon won the election by a landslide as his cabal managed to suppress the facts surrounding the invasion of the Democratic election offices until after the presidential election and his second coronation. Some of the truth surrounding the invasion was released to the public, and ultimately, Nixon resigned because his fingerprints were all over the crime scene. This sent the political pendulum veering off in another direction, and the rats scattered once again. All this brings us to the conditions precedent with the former Obama White House, Hillary Clinton, and their gang of conspirators. The only difference today with these power-hungry Democratic conspirators is that they are a diverse group of ethnicities and ages. This looks more like a Gap clothing store ad than true statesmen seeking justice. What one should notice right out of the gate is that nothing essentially has changed. We have all the same types of covert players. This is merely a remake of an old movie. Same tired script, different time period, diverse cast, some catchy music with some rap and hip-hop to appease the audience. Even the Russians are still here. Go figure. We can't shake them. They are a good diversion. Just like the DACA crowd in the Women's Protest March. This is all the responsibility of the set designer who diverts the audience attention. There are the same rats and the same stinky cheese. If one were to do an ancestry DNA test on the rats, I would guarantee that they are part of the lineage dating to the Lincoln White House conspirators. The new generation of Straughts and Pages are merely products of the government educational system, whereby leftist social indoctrination is the norm. They are not biased. They are programs within the matrix. Comey and Lynch are spineless, but conspirators nonetheless. And what are they all yelling about today? Do not release the documents for the public to see. After all, we are sheep with no real purpose other than to eat and breed. Power corrupts, but the rats always seem to survive. It's time to break the cycle of karma and the political pendulum. What's good for America should be the new criteria and higher standard, regardless of the party. The Straughts and Pages, Comeys and Lynches, Clintons and Obamas are simply the new burglars whose names have been changed to protect the guilty. I say thank God that President Trump understands all too clearly that when one crosses the threshold into the Oval Office, all party affiliations must be set aside. What is best for the nation as a whole, not the few, becomes paramount. The results of this last presidential election shockingly demonstrated the contrast between a partisan community organizer and political hack with an extreme leftist agenda for a president, and one who now seeks a long overdue adjustment to the record. Interestingly, this is kind of fun to watch. I do not know if you knew this or not, but the president has installed these plug-in electronic devices throughout the White House, and the constant drumbeat of annoying impulses are driving the rats crazy. Of course, I could be wrong, but doubtful. Thank you. You can check out my website on toopredictable.com, of course, anytime.